It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we feeling?
You know, I was having a really good day. I was really busy, had a lot going on, like a million transactions, and those days always just seem to fly by because I have so much to do during the day. And then I got out of practice at 3:15. I knew the injury report was coming in a little bit, that I didn't have a lot of time to work on anything. I just hit one of those walls where I was just you go from really busy to okay, now I have some time, but it's not really enough time to accomplish much. So I don't know. I was texting my wife and I said, I don't know. I kind of lost my mojo here in the middle of the afternoon. She goes, well, it's okay. Your favorite time is coming up. And I sent her back a question mark, and she sent me back in all caps, podcast time. That'll get you going. And I'm like,
the intro
right.
mainly.
Yeah,
just hearing the music.
The intro. Yeah. But there you go.
There we go. You mentioned the transaction stuff. I guess we can kind of briefly just kind of go through some of that stuff because I actually think that we haven't talked enough about the special teams unit, and that really took a hit with these recent transactions as of late, with Ben Skowronek and Tyler Matakevich both going to IR. We already talked about them bringing James Pierre back, who definitely I feel like could be elevated to the 53 on Sunday because they're going to need a gunner there. Roddy Williams coming up to the 53. We talked about Michael Pruitt's knee issue. I don't think that bodes well for him, but just kind of sifting through some of this stuff, Alan, what do we make of these recent transactions?
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like the special teams units, we talked a lot in training camp about how we're really worried about the punt gunners and I think, and they kind of seem to have it figured out. And then Skowronek's hurt, Matakevich is hurt. That's two multi-phase special teamers. I think Skowronek was working 3 phases and Matakevich is working 4. It really hurts to lose those guys. It's not the same when you try to replace them with other people. So I think they have a little bit of luxury in that James sitting there, they were able to snap him up. Roddy Williams has played a lot of special teams for them over most of last season, but has been on the team for now. This is his 3rd year with the team. So he's very familiar with what they're trying to do on special teams. It's not like they're bringing in someone who doesn't know the job. And so bringing Roddy Williams, I expect him to play and get a helmet. I don't know that it's all about Michael Pruitt's knee. I think it's mostly about special teams, right? That's your replacement for Tyler Matakevich. That's a big-bodied special teamer. And then you have James Pierre to replace Ben Skowronek as a gunner. I think Pierre's a very good gunner. Fairly fortunate that he was available. And then, if they want to replace Skowronek's ability as a wide receiver, then I think you're talking about Roman Wilson getting a helmet. So it wouldn't surprise me if we go from Skowronek, Pruitt, Matakevich to Wilson. By the way, Hot Rod is probably the best nickname on the team. I love it. I'm a big fan. And James Pierre getting hats. So to me, that's the way the helmet math looks. I know we had a question. I don't even want to cut to it now. Maybe we'll get to it later. But there's a question about Terrell Edmonds maybe getting a helmet for defensive purposes. And I can see that. I'm just not sure as it stands right now. I think special teams drives the bus when it comes to helmets, and that's kind of the way I see things shaking out right now.
Well, it's interesting you say about Pruitt because you're right. I mean, I shouldn't forecast what that looks like already because Hot Rod could just be coming up to play special teams. But I also look at what Pruitt has played offensively, right? 40 snaps in that first game, nearly 60% of their snaps, played another 28, which is 42% of their snaps in week 2. I mean, that's a significant amount of offensive snaps that he's played, and I just wonder where those go.
Man, I hope they go to Rodney Williams. I think he's good. I think
okay. Yeah.
I think he's legitimately a good receiving tight end. He's not as good of a blocker as Pruitt. And so I think maybe you'll see – how many did Darnell Washington have?
His was a little bit less than week 1 for sure, I believe. I'm not sure about week 2.
Yeah, well, he was coming
Yeah,
off the knee injury in week 1.
he played 37%, or I'm sorry, 37 total, 54% of the snaps, 29 snaps, 43.9% in week 2. So he's played a total of 66 compared to the 68.
I think he could play more. I would play him more. I think George Pickens needs some of those snaps too. We talked about that the other day. But look, I think Rodney Williams can play tight end in the NFL. In terms of depth pieces, man, that's a heck of a practice squad player. So I mean, I don't think there's a lot of trepidation about him playing. I don't think there's some kind of big drop off. I do think stylistically he's just a little bit more of a receiving threat than Pruitt is. And Pruitt's more of a blocker, but I mean, I think he's a really good player. Really good, maybe. Considering he was on the practice squad, I think he's a really good option.
Yeah, for him to just be able to keep coming back to the Steelers, I feel like has been fortuitous for them. I want to ask you about Roman Wilson, though. You mentioned him in there, maybe getting the snaps with Skowronek going to IR and us expecting Roman Wilson to come back. But I don't know. I guess I was expecting him to not be limited today. I'm not saying that's, again, I'm not trying to forecast what his availability is going to be in the middle of the week here. But I kind of expected that we were going to be past this and we'd see a full participation from Roman Wilson today.
Yeah, I did too. And I'll be honest, like I felt like I saw him do a good bit. So like already last week. So like I was really expecting him to, like he was a full participant last Thursday, and then was limited Friday. And okay, whatever. If you've already decided he's not going to play, then on Friday when you're really like honing in on the details of what you're doing, it doesn't make sense to have guys that aren't going to play in the way. You know what I mean? But I really thought that having him been full last Thursday, that he would be a full participant today. We'll see. If he goes full Thursday, Friday, I still think he's in. And if it's not him, I think Brandon Johnson probably gets in line for a helmet because I think they need another receiver in there.
I know I shouldn't be pounding the table as hard as I am for Brandon Johnson. I just want to see him. Like until I actually see him play a game, I'm probably going to continue to say this guy should be elevated on a Sunday and get a helmet just to get a look to see what he can provide compared to what the rest of the room hasn't up to this point. But certainly excited to see Roman Wilson as well. So if that's the trade-off, I'll take it. I think he needs to get his feet wet at the very least, despite how much of a contributor or non-contributor I think he'll be right out of the gate. You mentioned the Terrell Edmunds thing. That's kind of where I want to go now, just because we're already kind of talking about it. We had a question/comment come in, and this was actually from this morning's Morning Rush. If you haven't yet, be sure to go check that out. Pierre Blackwell said, "What I'm interested in is how the Steelers will defend against the Chargers offense, being that it's run by Greg Roman. Obviously, the Steelers have the familiarity there. Will they use a 3 inside linebacker set? Maybe employ Terrell Edmunds, give him a helmet on Sunday because they want to load up the box against that offense?"
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I don't know if they can find a way to get Terrell Edmunds a helmet. I'm sure they'd like to have some depth there and strong safety. Maybe you scratch Darius Rush. I don't know. But
that's actually the name that came to mind for me.
I think the Steelers certainly are ready for a Greg Roman defense. They faced it 8 times over the last 4 years when he was with the Greg Roman offense. When he was with the Baltimore Ravens. And I think, I don't know how much they feel like they need to reinvent the wheel for it. They've used that 3 outside linebacker package against it a good bit. If you remember, that was kind of Alex Highsmith's breakout game his rookie year. He was the 3rd outside linebacker along with Bud Dupree and TJ Watt, and Baltimore ended up intercepting Lamar Jackson in that game. I could see a lot of Nick Herbig in this one. I also just think it's anytime you play the Ravens, it's a big base defense day. Like, I think you're going to see a lot of Keanu Benton and that defensive line rotation is going to become really important. I think it minimizes guys like Beanie Bishop. I think that's really the player that I think you will see not play a lot because of the matchup, although they do have a decent slot receiver in Palmer. But I think the way that the Chargers are going to want to line up is going to involve a lot of tight ends, some fullback, two running backs on a pony look, 2 running backs at the same time. And I think, to me, like the Steelers played a lot of base against 3 wide receiver sets in Atlanta. They played a lot of the heavy nickel. I think you'll see both of those looks more than you'll see Beanie Bishop in that traditional nickel look. So, I mean, I don't know that they need Terrell Edmonds. It certainly wouldn't hurt. I think they'll probably keep things the way they were in terms of the personnel of the defense. But certainly, it's going to look different than it did last week.
You mentioned Josh Palmer at DNP today, along with Justin Herbert, which I don't want to spend too much time on because
I saw
it
Herbert,
is a Wednesday, but
Palmer.
Yeah, Palmer as well, and Junior Colson, DNP today, which, it's Wednesday. So again, that's something to monitor more later in the week. We'll continue to discuss that as we kind of dive into the matchups of this game. Don't want to spend too much time on it here today, but not only the offensive coordinator, Allen, Greg Roman, the familiarity with, but the backs that they have there, obviously too, and J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I mean, it's just across the board. It's like they're playing the Ravens again today.
Hayden Hurst,
what do you see? And Hayden Hurst is there as well. What do you see from them on tape so far through 2 weeks? I know they've gone against the Raiders and Carolina Panthers, but they've obviously had a ton of success on the ground in doing so.
Yeah, man, we were just kind of made a joke about this last night, about how this is a very conservative offense. This is like you look at the Ravens and like the Ravens had Lamar Jackson when they were running this offense, right? It looked different. And I think I talked a lot this morning about how I think Justin Herbert provides an interesting dynamic to that offense where it's like, you kind of always imagined, how good would this Ravens offense be if Lamar Jackson could just beat you with his arm routinely? And I think Justin Herbert kind of provides the potential answer to that, but it hasn't really happened on tape yet. I think there's a potential for it there, but you look at what Michigan did last year and how much they ran, and Joey Porter Jr. today was asked about it. He's like, man, it looks a lot like Michigan to me. Like there's, that was a team that was like allergic to throwing the ball. I think you're going to see two teams very much in the same mode here. I'm not sure why the Chargers are that way. They seem like with their quarterback situation, they would be more suited to being more balanced. Obviously, the Steelers are trying to nurse a young offensive line through some injuries and have injuries at quarterback and don't have a whole lot of wide receiver talent. Not that the Chargers are overflowing with it. But, I think the Steelers' mindset here makes a little more sense. I'm not sure why the Chargers are being just so conservative. And then you wonder, I was talking with Isaiah Loudermilk about this today. It's like, okay, everybody knows everybody really well. Like the Steelers are really familiar with Greg Roman. They're really familiar with the personnel. He's obviously really familiar with the Steelers and, had guys like Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott in his locker room with him. So, like, there's so much familiarity both ways. Will it be what's on tape? Or will one team or the other or both come out and just try to be a tendency breaker, to come out and do something totally different that the other team hasn't seen? And so I think it becomes this little game of spy versus spy, right? Where it's like, well, they're doing this, but I know they're doing this, but they know that they're doing this. So what are they going to do? And I think it's a really interesting matchup for this game. But in general, what I've seen from the Chargers is the Steelers, basically. Just running the ball a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think a big contributing factor in that, man, like we talked about rookie tackles not being very good right away. Joe Waltz has been fantastic in his first 2 games in the NFL for the Chargers.
Yeah, man, 3 first-round picks across the offensive line. Where have I heard that before? Like you said, it's the Steelers versus the Steelers. Like that's really what we're getting here this week.
Very much am trying to have that same formula, but that brings up an interesting point. Alan, you said, I can't remember, you said Greg Rosenthal was kind of the one, I think he was the one you said put it out there about Justin Herbert is boring. Harbaugh is making Justin Herbert boring. And I think it's an interesting talking point because there's a lot of Steelers fans that have felt that way, obviously, about the offense for years. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but there's a lot of people that also believe that that's by intention.
Well, sometimes it is. I mean, I think there's a difference between boring and bad, right? Like,
yes.
In general, I think, like, why do we why do we associate good with high scoring? Like, I don't know. There are lots of good games that are low scoring. Like, I don't think that, like, there's a big difference between boring and bad. The Steelers offense the last few years was bad. It was not well executed.
And boring.
Sometimes it was interesting, but never in a good way. And so, there's a big difference between boring and bad. You can make boring a good strategy. You can make low-scoring football a good strategy. It certainly, like, it's like if you're a pitcher in baseball, okay? Some guys throw 100 miles an hour and they're really good at it, and some guys throw 80 miles an hour and they're really good at it. And you can do either. The best pitchers can do both, right? The best pitchers have a 100-mile-an-hour fastball and then a great changeup, right? They can play the game either way. They can tailor their attack to their opponent's weakness and feel comfortable doing either thing. Right now, I think the Steelers are very comfortable winning low-scoring football games, and I think they're good at it. It's not bad offense that their defense is dragging to wins. I think they are executing an intentional game plan quite well. But at some point they will probably need to have to be able to do more than that. And I don't have any idea whether they will be able to or they won't be able to. But like I think the people have this idea that like coaches like Jim Harbaugh and like Mike Tomlin don't want to score a lot of points, that they're just like being boring because they want to be boring. And it's like, no, boring can win you a lot of football games if you do it well. And you have to be honest about your own team's talents. I mean, how many college coaches have gotten famous, running up the scoreboard, gone to the NFL, tried to do the same stuff that they did in college and crashed and burned? And just like, it's really hard to win in the NFL. Like, you've got to be really honest about your own talents, abilities, and chances. I don't think either of these teams, when you look at the personnel in these offenses, are built to go chuck it around. Like, I think they're going to be limited offenses that are probably only going to do one thing. This is Rich Hill, not Randy Johnson. And I don't think it's because that's what their coach wants them to be. That's all they've got in the tank.
Do you remember, I don't remember how long ago it was, and that we've done so many of these episodes. Do you remember a while back when somebody asked us about how good we felt the Steelers were at self-scouting?
Yeah.
That's kind of coming into my mind right now in terms of the understanding of what you have at your disposal on the football team and the way that you need to win football games, what the recipe needs to be. Not the recipe for the hot dog, but the recipe to win football games.
Yeah, you can't give up the recipe for the hot dog. First of all, if you have a really good one, you can't let anybody else in on it. And second of all, you might not like it. I think, like you have, like, being honest about your own team's strengths and weaknesses is hard. I think the Steelers, and we know that Mike Tomlin is okay with leaning on his offense to score a lot of points. Like, do you all forget that 2015 to 2018 happened? They're the best offense in the league for multiple seasons in a row. Like, he's clearly okay with recognizing when the strength of his team is offense and leaning into that as the game plan and throwing the fastball. But this is the most expensive defense in the NFL. Look at the holes on offense. Look at the inexperience on offense. Look at the injuries on offense. And just, it's very hard to honestly say, man, this team should really be airing it out. Like, like I keep seeing people like, why won't Arthur Smith take the handcuffs off? I'm like, it's because the chances are it's not going to go well if they do. And if they get to a point where they have to, sure, but let's be honest about the talent. It's not there. They're winning the way they probably need to win.
So I guess, and we're only through 2 games, so I'm not saying that this is necessarily where I'm coming from right now, but like, say this were to continue the way that it has, I think something that would pop in my mind, and I've kind of already seen in the comments already, is if that's going to be the case, if we've already seen them be able to win football games like this, in the past, and there's really nothing changing about what the formula is this year. Did they need to really go and reshape the quarterback room in the way that they did?
I mean, I don't know. I think, like I said, if you can't settle for only being able to do one or the other.
I agree. Yeah.
You like in team building, when Omar Khan goes out there to put this team together, he can't in his mind settle for, hey, we're just going to be a team that's not that good at offense, but we can still win. But Mike Tomlin can. Mike Tomlin can look at, Mike Tomlin just picks up the cards that he's dealt and says, "Phew, this is not the hand to go all in with." Like these guys are only good at one thing. Like, let's just do that. So I think it's incumbent on Omar to keep trying, to keep turning over stones to try to get to a team that can do everything it could possibly need to do to win a game. I mean, that's the ultimate goal for a general manager, right? General manager, what the ultimate thing you want to do is, I want to put pieces together for this team so that no matter what the coach has in his mind, says, what we really need to be able to do to beat these guys is X. And these guys is every team in the NFL and all of the different possible variables your coach has at his disposal. That's what the general manager wants to do. But it's the coach's job to be honest about what he has and what he doesn't have and find ways to win as many games as he can anyway. There's no team out there that's perfect. There's no team out there that has all those answers. Some of them just figure out a way to, get through what they can get through better than others. And, I just think you look at I don't think the Steelers are being conservative because that's what Mike Tomlin wants to be. They're being conservative because Mike Tomlin recognizes that is the most likely path to the most wins for this particular group of football players.
Yeah. And by the way, like I said, I'm not of that train of thought, at least not right now. I think those were worthwhile shots to go take with the quarterback room, especially for what they acquired those two guys for. I do think, though, and like the one difference, at least that I'm seeing right now, and if this continues, it would be much improved upon last year. Even if there's not a lot of scoring, certainly would be beneficial to the defensive side of the ball if they are able to control the clock a little bit more, which the time of possession, at least through 2 weeks, shows that at least should be the case.
I think they're playing pretty good complementary football right now. They're not turning the ball over. They're controlling the clock. They're getting good play out of their special teams all the way around, from Boswell to the kick coverage. And so that certainly helps anybody. I touched on that this morning. The Steelers defense doing very well, not taking anything away from it, but also has not dealt with the short field once in 2 games. That is certainly a big advantage for a defense. And so I think, I don't think Mike Tomlin is out there like celebrating the success of his offense with 31 points through 2 games. But I think he's honest about what they have and what they're probably capable of. And there's nobody out there. There's nothing coming. Maybe they get Russell Wilson back and maybe he will be a little bit more effective than what Justin Fields has been. But I don't think you should be hoping on that for, some sort of groundbreaking change. I don't think you should be hoping on Roman Wilson. Isaac Seumalo, there's some little steps forward that you can make there, but this is not going to be a team that suddenly by midseason starts scoring 50 points a game. It's just not going to happen. And it's not that I just think the thing I keep seeing out there is that this is what Mike Tomlin wants. That he doesn't want to play good offense, and that's nonsense. He wants to win. And this is what he's worked out that this team is capable of doing that adds up to a victory.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, this is the last thing on this, though, because we've talked about feeling like, Justin, maybe they're giving him a back quarterback game plan. Obviously, he hasn't turned the football over. That's been great, stuff like that. But do you at least feel like whether it is Russ getting back in there or them just being like, okay, we got to continue to roll with Justin, that eventually does change? Or do you feel like that's never going to be opened up and this would just be the game plan going forward if it is Justin or if it is Russell Wilson?
No, at some point it will have to change. I assume that they're at some point going to be significantly trailing in a football game. That's going to happen at some point down the road. I think for me, it's about you kind of have a good idea of what kind of game you're going to get. And I think when you look at these first couple opponents, and you can probably include the Chargers in this, like, this is not going to be some shootout. And you set your game plan and your expectations and the way you're managing things based on the game script as you see it playing out. Like, what do we think is going to happen here? Okay, then what do you need? And, so I think if you're going into Cincinnati, you can't go into Cincinnati thinking 13 points is going to win you the game. You just can't. Like, that's too good of an offense. You can't play the Chiefs on Christmas and think 18 points is going to win you the game. You just can't. So you have to go into those games. You can't just wait until you're trailing. You have to go into those games with an expectation that your offense is going to have to do more and the intention of doing more from the beginning. I think some more experience from Zach Frazier, getting Sayamalu back, and propping up that offensive line a little bit would certainly go a long way toward them being able to feel like they can do a little bit more in the passing game than they have. Like, Justin Fields has been running around a lot. I think Russell Wilson, when healthy right now, is the better player, but I do think that the kid have to be 100% healthy for me to want to put him back there behind the pass protection that they've gotten for 2 games, which has not been flawless by any stretch of the imagination.
At the very least, can we get some more QB runs back in there for week 3?
Yeah, I think you will. I mean, you look at these edge rushers, and I think that's a great way to minimize them. The screen game, too, probably. I think you'll see come back in this one. And I think, in general, the Steelers have had, like, small victories, and you want to try to build off them. So I think you'll see them continue to try to add things. But I doubt it's going to be some big, eye-opening leap. I think it'll be more iterative, right? It'll just be like a little bit more.
Well, Yurti wants to see inclusion from one person specifically. He said, is Freiermuth going to see more action here soon, and would using him split out help the offense, or are they being a little bit more cautious with him to start the year?
No, I don't think they're being cautious with him. I think he's been wide open a whole bunch and has not gotten the football. I think Pat Freiermuth has been the greatest victim of Justin Fields' decision-making mistakes. And I'm not saying that those mistakes have been like, oh my gosh. It's just like you watch the tape and you're like, there's an open guy, there's an open guy, there's an open guy. And look, you can do that with every quarterback in the league. But it just, for whatever reason, it seems like the majority of the time I'm doing that when I'm watching the Steelers tape, it's been 88. He's been out there. There's been long passes. And by the way, we didn't really talk about this play after the game. What a catch by him, the play before Washington's touchdown.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal – and what a throw, too. I mean, Fields was running to his left, drops it over the defender. Freiermuth with a great catch. That was a very, very difficult play. I just think for whatever reason, he's been out there. They've been flexing him out. They've been using him in all kinds of different formations. He's been running all kind of routes, and he's been open. I don't know. He can't get the football. It's weird that it's happened and it's been him so much. But I can't put my finger on any specific reason for it other than just it's the way things go sometimes.
Yeah, I do think it's coming like a big breakout game for him. You mentioned that one catch that you brought up, just very close to being a touchdown. If it doesn't, like, I understand where Justin had to put that ball, how he got to that point where that had to kind of be the throw. But, if it doesn't lead him the way that it does, no one was in front of him to the pylon.
Yeah. There are so many open, a lot.
Yeah, there was like 2 that were like directly up the seam where the guy that's covering him just like drifts off and goes to the middle of the field and just leaves him, and the safety wasn't helping over top. So there was plenty of opportunities for Pat to have a big day this past Sunday, and I think one's coming up here in the near future.
Yeah, but I don't think they're taking it easy on him, or I don't think they're minimizing him in any way. To really fully answer the question, I think he's just not getting the ball, which is weird because I would think that's where you'd be one. I mean, who else do you want to throw it to? I don't really understand why that's been an issue. But maybe we'll ask Justin Fields about it when I talk to him tomorrow.
I mean, he leads them or tied for the lead in receptions with 8, and he's second with 66 yards. It's just they haven't done a lot of that. Like Justin only has 273 passing yards right now, so Pat has 66 of them.
And George has 114, and nobody else has more than like 10.
30. Jalen Warren is 30. Yeah.
Right. On all yak, I will add.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. But like Pat has caught all 8 of his 8 targets. So, yeah, hopefully there's more work coming in the near future. Alan, anything else?
No, I don't think so. We'll be back at it tomorrow. I'll have Morning Rush. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. What do you want me to talk about on Morning Rush?
Maybe. Well, you know what? Let's leave it up to if no one in the comments. I'm going to go through the comments as like in the first couple hours of this being put up. If no one else has a very good idea, maybe I'll come up with something. But let's leave it to the comments and see if they can cook up something for tomorrow's Morning Rush.
All right, there we go.
Other than there, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now, SteelersNow.com. Like and subscribe to YouTube channel. Hit that bell for notifications. That's it.
There you go. And like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review. If you were listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, search Steelers Afternoon Drive, and you will find us there. Just like you will find us at Steelers Afternoon Drive on TikTok. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.